The most American of all Canadian provinces, by widespread reputation and self-regard, Alberta is also the polity that Eastern Canada, particularly Quebec, relies on to survive while it pursues its disdainful socialist green agenda. This is the Quebec that is whined and manipulated so effectively for so many decades that its minority bilingual citizenry utterly dominates not only the perennially ruling Liberal Party, but the federal bureaucracy. That constitutes only two such unjust and unproductive advantages among many, by the way, and all that despite the Francophony's strong and lasting separatist leanings. This is the same Eastern Canada and Quebec that regards itself as entitled not only to the so-called transfer payments characterizing the Canadian social contract, much to the disadvantage of the resource-rich West, but that simultaneously assumes and trumpets a moral superiority to the people who earn that transferred money in a manner deeply reminiscent of that more generally assumed by Canadians with respect to Americans. The consequence? No business case for the trade deals or infrastructure projects necessary to supply a self-admittedly desperate Europe and Japan with cheap and reliable Alberta energy. No new, plentiful, and gratefully received pipelines running west to east in Canada. Abject economic dependence, in consequence, for Albertans and Canada itself, as we're now finding out, on the purchasing decisions of the mad MAGA Yanks to the south. And now, that same Alberta is being called upon to sacrifice its artificially and morally limited economy to fight off the looming tariffs of Donald J. Trump, the imposition of which should come as no surprise to anyone the least bit awake. We walked right into this, folks, and boy, we deserved it, but we felt good about ourselves all the way. And what is likely to result? Trump has offered Canada status as the 51st state. If we had a well-constituted country, this would have never happened, or the suggestion would have been laughable. I see damn few people laughing, however, and more's the pity. A strong case can be made that such subordinate status would not at all be a good deal for the Great White North as a whole. For Alberta, however, and perhaps for the West as such, the situation is not so clear. Here's what I might do, given that, if I were in Premier Daniel Smith's shoes, or at least what I might threaten to do, taking a page from Trump's Art of the Deal book, because it's high time for the Albertans to play hardball. I might travel, say, to Mar-a-Lago, where I did, in fact, recently encounter that premier. I might have, well, there, a forthright, even blunt chat with Donald J., where I might say to him something like the following. Mr. President, my fellow Canadians have for decades compelled us to climb into bed with an 800-pound gorilla. That would be you, Mr. Trump. Now you've decided to consummate the deal, so to speak, and we've given you the upper hand on a silver platter, to mix metaphors terribly. While you're doing so, Canada is unlikely to become the 51st state, however, not even Alberta, as you may well know, sir. After all, you'd have to offer us something better than what has been put forward by our fellow Canadians. That would be the continued privilege and expense of subsidizing Quebec, half of whose citizens consistently clamor to secede from the country, while we impoverish ourselves for their benefit. The constant imposition of serious practical impediments from the federal and other provincial governments, hint, hint, British Columbia, to the international business deals and pipelines that would help Alberta bring its resources to market. Continual insult on top of such injury in the form of unbearable and naive moralizing about their superiority in conviction with regard to the sustainability of the planet. And to top it all off, the accusation that I, Daniel Smith, am not patriotic enough to start a trade war with my strange bedfellow in the name of a country whose very leaders proclaim both identitylessness and a multiculturalism that none of my citizens want. And Trump might well say, or perhaps is even saying right now, I think I could top that offer, Ms. Premier. Fine as it is. I could offer Albertans the American dollar, full access to our markets for their resources at full international price, lower costs on almost all manufactured goods and on food, lower taxes, both corporate and personal, membership in a country that prides itself on being a country and that does not plan to dissolve itself into an unstable multicultural mishmash, genuine admiration for your economic and industrial endeavors, along with a can-do, visionary, and deeply entrepreneurial culture, immediate, reliable, and guaranteed access to ports and pipelines, and full military defense. And if that's not enough, dear lady, no transfer payments, and the additional psychological advantage for Albertans in foregoing the perpetual and bullying Eastern Canadian attitude of grievance and moral superiority, emanating in particular from the Quebec, give us what we want forever or we'll leave, who also shamelessly disdains your dirty fossil fuel, such that they made the fracking Alberta's economy depends on literally illegal in their jurisdiction, just to make a point, while simultaneously accepting, and not with good grace, the filthy money so generated. What do you think would happen, O Canada, if those were the two choices put forth on a ballot before the citizens of Alberta?